Hey guys, welcome back to Vertical Momentum. I'm your host, Richard Kaufman, also known as the Comeback Coach. Guys, if you ever want to hear a story of resilience, how to come back from tragedy to triumph, this is going to be an amazing episode. Chad is going to drop some amazing stuff. We're going to be talking about a little bit about everything. We're going to be talking about empathy. We're going to be talking about compassion. Not only is he a CEO, he's an author of an upcoming book. He's a felon, but now he's actually changing the world one body at a time. He's known as the body whisperer. So, Chad, my brother, welcome to the show.
Richard, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
I love it. And I got to give a big shout out to Mary Ellen. Mary Ellen, if it wasn't for you, we wouldn't be hanging out together. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mary Ellen.
Big shout out to Dunkin' Donuts for keeping me energized all day long. Your new dark roast coffee is truly amazing. Thank you, Duncan. So, Chad, first question right out of the gate.
Sure.
What is your definition of resiliency?
My definition of resiliency, I just like everybody else back in the day, it's about how many times you get up. It's not how many times you get knocked down. It's a keep going. We hear this all the time. But recently, I like to learn and I like to discover new things. And I came across the video, Sean McVay, an old coach or current coach. There's a lady at Duke. She's a PhD professor. She's talking about psychology. And she talks about resilience. And she's on a chalkboard. She's got two sides of the chalkboard. On one side, she has who you are. On the other side of the chalkboard is about who you want to be. On the other side, it's where you're at. And then on the right-hand side, it's where you want to be at. And in between there was a lot of ups and downs. There was a lot of failures. There's a lot of successes. And so it had a squiggly line. And what she said, what really rang a bell, she said, resilience is the ability to stay in the frustration period for the longest of time. It's the ones that can endure frustration without giving up, without quitting, right? Who can continue to find a way to get out of a frustrating situation and to enter that goal that you want to have. So I used to say it was about getting knocked down and getting back up. But now what I look at is, spending 30 months in prison, I spent 30 months in a frustrated state. And I was able to get over that, right? So now when I get into the streets, I do everything in business and life. Nothing really frustrates me. And if it does, it's something simple because I know there's a solution. So I think for resilience for me, it's how long somebody can stay in a frustrated state.
I love it. So give us a quick down and dirty about who you are, where did you grow up, how did you grow up, and how did you become the man that you are today?
Well, a lot of times, people want to know about the past. Where are you from? What'd you do, and all that. So, a quick little thing. The big question I ask everybody is, tell me a little something about yourself, just kind of like you did. And so, those are my physical properties. I'm a 51-year-old husband to my lovely, wife Jackie. I'm a current CEO of Move Human Performance Center. We're co-owners of it all. I grew up in Colorado. I raced BMX bikes. I love adrenaline. I love dopamine. Right. I'm more of an extreme sport athlete. So I did BMX. I played football. I wrestled. But then again, I also like entertainment. I got into partying, and that's what led me to get in some troubles over the course of my life. I used to say I made a couple of wrong turns, but I don't know if those were ever wrong turns. I think those were right turns that led me right back to the direction. It's almost like a GPS system, right? If you're on Apple Maps or Google Maps, if you take the wrong turn, it just redirects. So I don't call those wrong turns. I just had to redirect my life. And so here we are today, owner of a company, train a lot of professional athletes. I help a lot of comeback stories, people that overcome catastrophic burns, paralysis, So now it's all about the future.
Okay, well, let's go back because, without the past, we will not have the future.
All day long.
For me, I was looking at 5 years for grand larceny. Luckily, I didn't have to go, but I knew what I was looking at. But what is it like being behind those bars for those 30 months? Because you had to be a different mindset switch. You had to change something.
I did. And really what I had to change my identity. I had to change my identity. So, I was very fortunate. I met my current wife. I met her before I went to prison. She was bartending. I went in with my buddy. I just got released on pretrial. So I got bailed out. I came into a bar, sat down. We were talking about the last 9 weeks I was in hell and what I just went through flying across the country because I had a federal case. So I went from Arizona to Oklahoma to California to Hawaii. And then finally I saw a judge and I got bailed out. So I give everything to my wife. When I was in there, she was my why. And I know now we always talk about the why, but she's my everything, and she's the reason why I wanted to do this. And so when I got in trouble, obviously they say you're facing 25 years to life. I got convicted of money laundering was what it was. It was a drug conspiracy. I brought money back from Hawaii. That was the crime that actually happened. And I didn't get caught. I let everything go until 3 months later, and again, once you commit a crime, you're always going to get caught, and I know that now. So I was discussing everything. That's when I met Jackie. And so going to prison, the toughest thing about it was leaving her. I knew the new life I wanted. I knew I wanted to be a family man. She had some kids, right? I knew I could help her out. I knew she could help me out. But there was a 30-minute time frame that I had to first endure and I had to get through with. Walking into the land of the unknown, walking into the land of the unknown. But I've already been transferred around the nation beforehand, so I knew what I was already getting into. I had a self-surrender. Right. And so people say, Chad, why don't you fear nothing or why don't you stress about anything? Because stressing is when your fiance or your girlfriend or your wife drops you off at the federal marshal's building and you have to walk across the street, tell her I love you, tell you I'll see you later in 30 months. And then you walk across the street, you got to self-surrender, check yourself in. That's pretty stressful. Nothing in life right now can get me stressed more than that.
But now when you were in there, you had a choice to make. Like when I got sober, I've been sober 36 years coming up in January.
Congratulations.
For me, I had to stop hanging out with people, places, and things. And I know that once you got in there, you had a choice. You could either have been doing what everybody else was doing, or you could have started changing your mindset and changing your life from the inside out. So what are some of the things that you started to do that others weren't doing?
Well, growing up, like you say, what's your history? My dad, country people. So I grew up in a hard life. I knew what hard work was. That's why and I say this all the time, I was the best drug dealer. I was available 24/7. I worked hard. Yeah. I was the best drug user too, because I worked hard to go find the drugs when I became a user. Hard work was never a thing. As soon as I got to prison, I got lucky. The second day I had a guy come up, he says, Chad, you coming with me, you got to work. Most of the time you have to go through orientation and everything else. For whatever reason, he singled me out. He picked me up. So I was on a construction crew, right? From day one, I was doing things constructive around prison. We built a visitation center from the ground up. I carried it like I was still living on the streets. I had a job. I had something to do. And not only that is that, when you go into prison, you're by yourself at first because you don't know. Let me do my time and I'll let you do your time. That's kind of the whole theory and the whole saying that's inside of there. And again, you don't know people. You don't know what's going on. Federal system and state systems are a little different with the segregation, and the ABs and, different gangs and different things that are in there. So I just kind of had to analyze, just like everything else. I had to analyze. So I sat back, and I just analyzed some things and did what I had to do or what I was told to do. I met some good friends in there, and very fortunate. I had some good buddies that came up to me within the first 2 weeks and they said, you're with us, right? And it's my dear friend, Robbie. He did 19 and a half years. He's out of Canada, Washington, had some crimes. And so I had some good people that were in there. They told me from day one, you're not going to be drinking the hooch. You're not going to be making the hooch. You're not going to be over here smuggling shit in. You're definitely not going to be doing anything or using anything that was smuggled in. You're here to do your time, and we're here to do this right. So I carried myself inside prison like I would outside. It was just a different saying. I was locked up for 30 months, and I couldn't leave. So I stayed productive, and that's the biggest thing because, again, I'm never the victim. I was never the victim in any of my stories. There's a lot of victims that are in there and they get caught up in just sitting in bed and not wanting to work and fuck the system. He's got the man sitters that are over here. I got the man sitters that are watching me, but I wasn't that guy. I was the guy that went in there. I did my stuff. I passed time. I didn't count hours. I counted my 19 cents an hour. That's really the only thing I counted, but I had to put in the hours to get the money.
So now when you got out,
yep,
you had to reinvent and reimagine your life. And the reason why I ask these questions because a lot of veterans and first responders, when they get out of the military or they hang up their gun belt for the last time, yep, they have to reinvent and reimagine their life again. Mm-hmm. So talk to us about that process of reinventing and reimagining yourself once you got out, and now you're known as you're a convicted felon.
Yep. Well, nobody ever knew. So I went back to work. So my good friends I've always worked with, Rehab Plus, they're my good people. I went right back to work the first day I got out of prison. I had a job. And that's what you need. You need to have a job. Even if from the military, you have to have a job. First responders, they retire, whatever. You have to stay busy. So you have to have a job. Anybody overcome an addiction, I talk to a lot of them and they say they're doing good. And, I'm recovering. I've been sober for so long. And the first question I asked them, I said, so how's your job doing? And they said, well, I'm kind of in between jobs right now. I'm trying to figure this out. And if you're doing good, you have a job. You have to collect a paycheck. Right? Because the paycheck is what makes you feel good. It's about money. It really is. It's about money. And it can be a little bit. I was prideful when I got 19 cents an hour. I really was, because I was collecting money. I was earning something. So the more you earn something, the more dopamine that your body releases. The more dopamine your body releases, the better of a feeling that you have of an accomplishment or to go get a next goal. And that's one of the things that it's a sense of accomplishment. That's one of the things that gets people hooked up on getting high is because they got rewarded. So you have to take that dopamine and you have to do something. So when I got out, again, like I said, I was lucky. I had the job the first day, but I went to work with a label on me that only a few people knew, but I knew it, and I didn't know if people were going to be looking at me differently. A lot of the people I went back to work with, they knew me before I went away. They were just told that I went to Hawaii to work on an oil rig. There's no oil in Hawaii, I promise you. But my boss told everybody that I was in Hawaii working on an oil rig, right? Again, I wanted to stay low key, because again, my health and fitness and everything that I do in helping people, again, labels and people are very quick to judge. So I just went back to work like it was normal because I kept that structure when I was in prison. Right? It wasn't something new to have for me to start back at work. I just had a different setting, right? I was outside and I was back in my environment. I trained people when I was in prison, right? People were about, fitness is medicine, movement is medicine. So you could still train people while you were there. Everybody inside had a hustle. And that was one of my hustles. So I never stopped training. Again, you got to get right back to where it was. Never did I was already at the lowest. I was in the ditch. There was only one way out and that was up. So my new identity when I got there is I knew I had to do the best for me. I was a new man. I was a new person. And now, again, I was back with my fiance, Jackie, when I got out. And so now I've got a purpose. I need to provide. I need to be a provider.
And, and I think it's so important. Like my bride, my wife is my most important thing. She knows the ins and outs. She knows my bad days, my good days. I can tell her anything and I know she's my ride or die. Yep. And I think that's so important to have somebody, even if it's not a fiance or a wife, just to have somebody that is your ride or die, where you have a safe place to come home to.
Yes, yeah, and that's a support system, right? We always talk about a support system, but the problem is that you got to make sure that your support system is real. And my wife, she's the realest person. The first night first date that we went on, I gave her my indictment, right, to read. Right, the first date, we get out of the restaurant, we get in my truck. I don't even think I gave her a kiss at this time, because I wasn't even sure. I pulled out my console and I just hit, for whatever reason, I had my indictment in my middle console of my truck. And I showed her my indictment and she looked at it and I was waiting for her response. And she said, you know what? So people make mistakes. And I thought, this is a good person right here. I told her from day one when I met her, I was going to marry her. Right. And so I knew I had a purpose. And like you said, family, I always use the F word. I got fun and I got friends. That's why I did all of my stupid shit earlier, because I was having fun and I was with some friends. Right. But the two F words changed. It became my family and my future. Right. And when you start narrowing things down, there's a greater purpose in life. And so it was when I got out, I started working with this guy, Eddie King. Obviously, that's kind of one of the main stories I have, is that he was paralyzed from a mountain bike accident. We got him walking again. Right. I had a gunshot guy that got his stomach point blank and, was in ICU for 8 months. I had him moving again. And then I had a gentleman that was on fire for about 2.5 minutes, got 60% burn of his body. I'm doing the rehab on them. But again, I see them get better. And I knew for me, I was getting better. Right. That's when I started becoming the mental guy, in my opinion. I started pushing them mentally. They started pushing me mentally. A lot of this stuff isn't physical. Right? It's mental. You cannot quit. You cannot give up. And that's what I was preaching to them. But at the same time, I was listening to myself saying the same thing. And that's what I kept telling myself daily is you can't quit. You can't give up. You got a future to do. And look at here we are now, CEO of a business. I'm still working, never giving up.
So let's talk about entrepreneurship. Because being an entrepreneur, they say being an entrepreneur is somebody that's willing to work 80 hours for themselves so they don't have to work 40 hours for somebody else.
Yep.
Let's talk about how you got bit by the entrepreneur bug.
Yeah. So, after the 7 years I got out, and I was doing very well. I made a great recovery. Everything was good. I started doing different things, and I knew that I had more to give people. Right. And working for somebody, I never thought I would leave Rehab Plus, but I was working with those guys forever. But then it was time for me to go. So I had a good friend. And again, my wife, she said, why don't you guys do your own thing? Why don't you do your own thing? You're good at this. You'll be great at this. And so I developed a plan. Everything that I do, you have to have a plan. And I developed a plan of what I was going to do. I was going to be a non-provider physical therapy owner. Right. I just can't have physical therapy yet because I didn't have the means. I had to get finances. I went to an angel investor. I did different things to generate money. I even asked for a loan, but as a convicted felon, the banks wouldn't give me a loan. Right. So a personal loan through a family. Right. Opened up Move. First day I made $75. Not good. My dad was a business owner back in the day, and he lost his business in the recession in 82 and 84. That's how I went from Colorado to Arizona. And my dad's very conservative right now. He's had everything. He had a job. He had his own company, but he lost it all, right? Not due to anything he could do. It was an economic crisis, and you can't control that. So he told me, he said, Chad, are you willing to lose your everything, including your wife, including your home? He says, if you want to do that, then you can become an entrepreneur and a business owner. I said, man, let's go for it. I've already lost a lot more than this. Right? This is about survival. And now I'm in charge, not the CEOs or anybody else. I'm in charge with everything. So we opened up Move. My wife was, again, my backbone of everything. She was here with me at 5 o'clock in the morning. Like you said, I was here 7 to 7 and 5 to 5, 12-hour days, 7 days a week, 84 hours. Right. I work more when I sleep than most people do when they're awake. Yeah? My head's constantly going. We had to build a team. Started doing good. I started getting busier. We started doing different things. I talked to my dad. He says, how's everything going? I said, it's building, Dad. We're doing good. He says, perfect. Have you had a day off yet? I said, no, I can't afford to take a day off yet. He said, it sounds like you bought yourself a job, not a business. Yes. Because a job, you don't have to be there. Yeah. Right. And I thought, and that still stuck with me. I'm like, all right, motherfucker, here we go. I got you. You know what I mean? So that forced me to work harder. I got to work harder because I do want to have somebody. I want to be a CEO. Right? I want to overlook things. I don't want to be doing the hands-on every day. Now, the way that we're structured, we are all a team, so we do everything. But I've got 8 employees right now. Right? We've grown, we've built, we've expanded, we've knocked the wall down. Right? And we still continue to expand. But more importantly is that the things that entrepreneurs and business owners face they're not just a daily grind. In 2020, we were open for 3 years. We faced this thing called COVID. Right? Shut down a lot of things around the country. Well, thankful for us in Arizona, we had physical therapy. We were essential business. We stayed open. Right? In prison, I've seen lockdowns. I've seen everything get shut down. And a lot of people succumb to fear. Right? With the lockdown that happened out here, I wasn't going to be fearful of it because I've already seen what happens, right? You got to be smart about it. You have to have a plan. So we did our spatial awareness. We had the 6 foot in between everybody. We had groups of volleyball players come in the morning. We had football players come in the afternoon. So we strategically placed people out so that we could still get people better because, again, I'm part of the medical chain. I can't stop. Right? There's no quitting.
But now also, I think it's something that a lot of entrepreneurs suffer with is they try to do it all and be it all. They try to do their marketing. They try to do their own everything. They don't build a team out. So yes. How important is building a team out?
Well, building a team in entrepreneurship or a business is the same thing as building in a recovery, right? You have to have one. And the more people that you have around you that are supportive, the better it's going to be. So having this team, everyone's delegated. I call it my wife. She's like the general manager. She sits in her office. She's got a window. She watches everything. I'm more like the head coach. My buddy Kane and Brandon, they're like the defensive coordinator and the offensive coordinator. So we all have everything's delegated, right? And that's the good thing that's now because it allows me to do these podcasts. It's allowed me to go out and do some speeches and speakings. Again, they have the same mission as that I do, and everything that we create down here, it is about a team method. Nobody's left out. Nobody's more important. At the end of the nights, and again, we're still private. We're still a small business. But at the end of the night, I'm the one that cleans the toilets, I have no problem doing that because I don't walk around like I've got my head on my shoulders. I'm too good for anybody else. I like going to the restaurants where you see the owner back there cooking, right? That's how you know it's a good restaurant. Yeah. Right? I'm here. I'm hands-on. I'm hands-on. But at the same time, though, is I'm not going to do all the work. I want my employees to work. That's how they're going to learn. You got to learn by doing.
So have you started taking days off?
Oh yeah. I take days off if I need to get out of here. We went to the NBA draft. We went to the NBA last year with one of our players. So that's good to be able to travel. I was able to take my boy Kane, my right hand man. We call those business trips. We jump on a plane, we get out of here for a couple of days, then we come back. When I was working with Arizona Compass, we went to the national championship for basketball for the Geico National Championships. Now it's called the Chipotle, but I was in Fort Myers, Florida for 5 or 6 days, right? So I could go over there and work with the team remotely when everybody was still running everything inside Move.
I love it. Like for me, I work 6 months out of the year. 6 months out of the year, I'm enjoying life, going on cruises. And I believe that the more you do enjoy those things, the harder you're going to work when it comes time to get back. Like when I get back from a cruise, I know I'm working 18 hours a day, 7 days a week until my next cruise. And I think a lot of people they don't enjoy life. They're either just hitting the time clock, and they're just going home and going to sleep and getting back. They're not enjoying what they're doing. So talk about having your job being your passion. That helps a lot instead of just ticking the time clock.
Like you were just saying, 6 months is 6 months. We wish everything could always be balanced, right? And that's really what we try to do. We try to balance life and we try to balance work. My wife, Jackie and I, we work together. We're together 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. People say, "How do you do it?" It's because I love her. Right? We love each other. We do everything together because we have a good time. So it's easier for me because my home is really here with my wife, right? When I go home and we're doing stuff, yes, we do talk about work, but we still have date nights every Saturday. We still do different things. We have time for ourselves, and that's really what it's all about. But I don't know if you can ever really balance work and life. That's the hard thing, the question that's really out there. But what you can do is you can align them. Right. And so what I've done is because I'm passionate with what I do, I love to help people, and I got people around the country, their time schedules are off. So I've currently got people playing professional basketball in Spain where the time, they might call me in the morning when it's nighttime over there. So, I'm always available. And that's just one of the things though, but that goes into customer service. Right. And it goes into customer service. And that's one thing that we do here at Move. We pride ourselves on the energy. We pride ourselves on the customer service. I'm not greater than anybody else, and nobody else's time is more important, from the professional athletes that come in here to just our normal population. They come in here, but again, it's the same time as I'm balancing them is all. Everybody's in line to get the same amount of treatment, and when you do that, everything runs smoothly, even when you're not working.
But now you also have been working for the last 16 months in writing a book. So talk to us about that.
Yeah, so the book, when I started Move, I was fortunate. I sat down. I met this lady. Her name is Laura Bush. She's with Peacock Press Publishing. I sat down and talked with this lady when I was getting ready to open up Move, and I was going to write a book. I had a former patient that told me that this would be a great thing. We sat down with her. She said, "You got a great story." Both Jackie and I have a great story. She was crying by the time we left. And then when we did come back, I said, "What's the value of it?" She gave me the price. She gave me the value of it. And there was just no way financially I could have done it at that time. So I turned 50 last year. And Jackie contacted Laura. She said, "For Chad's 50th birthday, I want to get him this book." Right. So last February, I started talking with Laura and talking to you. I was doing some interviews with some ghostwriters. I found a perfect match for me. We started writing. His name is James Tolley. He's out of Colorado. Just an awesome guy. So we started putting an outline together. First question they asked me, "Who do you want to write this book for?" And I said, "I want to write this book for people overcoming addictions or drug use, overcoming felony convictions or any type of a criminal past. I want to write it for anybody that's overcoming a catastrophic injury, anybody that wants to become and start a business, a CEO, an entrepreneur. I've got a lot of people I want to write this book for." And they both looked at me and they said, "Perfect, you're not going to sell it." I said, "What do you mean?" She says, "If you write a book for everybody, you sell it to nobody. There's got to be that one person that you write it for." So I said, I want to write this book to somebody who's having a hard time of finding out who they are when they've tried all of the help from classes, from programs, for whatever, and they can't ignore the noise, whether it be external or internal, and they can't ignore the noise. So I came up with an idea that I was going to give 10 codes, and it's 10 codes that I've used. Starting chapter 1 is identity, right? First thing to get better, that you ask me that, you got to know who you are. Right. Second chapter is based on choices. It's either yes or no. We're in a world right now where there's a lot of influences. We got a lot of options, right? But the more options you have, the more problems you have. So I've gone through in every chapter, I give a code. So 16 months, It came out. It's a beautiful book, not just because I wrote it, but it's a beautiful book, a very helpful book. And really what it does, it's simple. It's simple, but it takes the simple so back to the reader that you had to look in the mirror. And when you get done reading the book and you look in the mirror, you're going to know that you can overcome anything. Right? You're going to know you're going to overcome anything because it's now put onto you. It's either yes or no. It's either time now or not time. Right. But you have to figure out when you are ready. So with this book, 10 codes to transform your life, mind over virtual everything. If I can do it and I've done it, I know everybody else can.
I love it. So when does it become available?
Tuesday the 28th on Amazon. The book will become available. So I've got hardback, I got softback, and there's also an e-back version that's out there. So it'll become Thursday the 28th or Tuesday the 28th of October, nationwide, worldwide. It's going to be out there for everybody.
And what's the name of the book?
The title of the book is Mind Over Virtually Everything. 10 Codes to Transform Your Life.
I love it. So this is a teaching podcast. So if somebody was getting out of the military today,
sure,
what would be your top 3 pieces of advice to help them reimagine and reinvent their life?
Your self-identity is not fixed, it's fluid. So now that you're getting out of the military, you have to be willing to accept the new life that you're given. And you have to find out who that is that you want to be or what that is that you want to be. Right? So you have to look and find out first who you want to be. Second of all, like I said, you have to get a job. Right? Whatever it is, if you can go from to a civilian job or whatever job you can get, you have to have a job. And then the last thing, just like you had to do in the military, just like anything else, have a plan. Have a plan. You can never be in control, right? If we go to war, I can never be in control of war because I have an opponent and I have an enemy. But one thing I can always do is I can always be in command. If you be in command of yourself and we be in command of our platoon, our team or whatever, we have a better chance of conquering and winning the victory. So the biggest thing is always be in command. So once you find out who you are, you have to have a job, find out what you want to do. Once you do that, you're in command of creating both of those.
I love it. And I want to give a big shout out to our wives. My wife is Michelle. Your wife is Jackie.
Jackie.
I just wanted to give a big shout out to them. If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be here.
We would not be here.
I want to give a big shout out to Love. Marielle, and I want to give a big shout out to thank you for putting us together. I'm so humbled and grateful. Dunkin' Donuts, thank you so much for energizing me and keeping me going. Chad, my brother, I just want to say I'm so grateful to be able to hang out and talk with you. And I want to be the first one to buy your book. So I will be the first one ordering your book, and I'm going to take over my next cruise. I
love it. Yeah, and it's on the front of it. It's a checkerboard, and I got chess, right? Because in life, it's chess, not checkers, right? So the whole design from the front to the back, it's excellent, inside and out, front to back. It's a hell of a read.
I love it, brother. And guys, the way I end every show is every morning you wake up, you have a choice. You can be a victim, or you can be a victor. And if you listen to this show, you're no longer victims of your past. You're victors of your present and your future. Thank you guys for always showing up. 13 years strong, going strong. Thank you guys. I love you. And remember, vertical momentum, the only way to go is up.
Up.
I love you guys. Chad, my brother, keep kicking ass and taking names. Have an awesome week.